I'd say the whole of football will rejoice at that result, won't they? Even if the match was awful.
I think they will rejoice. And to see Casillas, very emotional at the end, a great professional player who's been a great player forever and was great tonight, really was. And Iniesta, who was outstanding, another player who really does it when the chips are down. I remember him scoring an equalising goal at Stamford Bridge for Barcelona the year they won the Champions League in the last minute of the match, stepped up to the plate. Fabregas made a difference when he came on. But it's been a very poor tournament, and there are signs in that final game of the illness in the game, diseased.
What do you mean?
Indiscipline, poor refereeing, desperate refereeing, the indiscipline of the players, anarchy on the pitch. They understand that there is no real rule of law in football, there's no justice in football, and that really was their understanding, their cynicism, and their understanding of the weaknesses of referees like Howard Webb, I think motivated and informed the way Holland approached the match. And that's why what Liam said is so right about, had they won the game, it would have been terrible for football, because people emulate champions. And when you think of other sports, again, you have to see a game of football in a wider context. And in the wider context, what we saw tonight in terms of histrionics, cheating, thuggery and incompetence was deep sadness.
I wonder, though, would it mean that the kind of cynicism that was displayed by Holland and the fact that it was unproductive at the end of the day will mean that people will say, let's play like Spain.
Well, I think there'll be more encouragement.
Or Germany.
And I think Eamon's right. The only justice was that Spain did win, ultimately. That was the final justice. Because if Holland had won, it would have justified all the things that they were doing on the day. So that's why I mean, in the end, I wanted Spain to win from the start, but in the end I was absolutely delighted, despite the fact that it was a very, very disappointing game. But the winners came out okay.
But to take Eamon's point that it was a poor tournament, no team played like Spain, really, did they? They weren't kind of proactive, as it were, in trying to play good football all the time.
They were the best footballing team. They had players with the most skill. They had a vulnerable defence, but they had Casillas to fall back on when that didn't work, and he did it again today. He did it in a couple of the early games. But when you see players like Xavi, Iniesta, Villa, Fabregas when he came on, these guys deserve to win the World Cup, no doubt about it. It's just a pity. I can't understand why Holland didn't try and play football, because they've got smashing players.
Maybe the coach doesn't think the players.
Well, I think he's betraying football. He's the custodian of Dutch football. That man is, isn't he? It's his job. It's his responsibility. And if he goes down that road, well, I think it's a dark day.
I think the reports from Holland, Bill, was that they were very, very upset, despite the fact that they were getting to the final, with the way in which the Dutch team were playing.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. But John, at the end of the day, if they had, for the first time, won the World Cup,
well, that's true.
I suspect
it could well have been. But I think the likes of Cruyff and these guys, to be fair to them, did speak out before the World Cup and said this is not the way we've played over the years, and they just didn't like it. And I think now that they didn't win it, Bill, there will be some criticism and maybe a change of policy for the future.
I think fouls like Van Bommel committed in the first half and De Jong committed in the first half would never justify winning a World Cup. Even if you won it, would never justify that kind of thuggery.
See, a sport is defined, Bill, by its champions. Always has been, always will be. And the sporting, skillful, positive way that Spain play will inspire kids. But it is defined by its champions. If Holland had won, it would have been... I'll tell you what happens. Okay. They would have gone back to the academies all over Europe, the rest of the world. And a lot of coaches would want to play that way. They'd want...
But would they encourage talent? Is the talent available to play that way?
They could have played tonight. They could have tried to play. But
Holland, you think?
Yes, of course they could. They have players. Look, Sneijder is a top player who was very influential in Inter Milan winning the Champions League. Yeah. You didn't see Sneijder on the ball tonight.
Not really.
One pass for Robben's great chance in the first half was his contribution to the game. Now, his coach clearly didn't make him or didn't want him or didn't have a system in play that encouraged Sneijder to be the player he can be. The really big players for them were Van Bommel and De Jong in midfield, committing atrocious foul after atrocious foul. We have a package of them, and there's 9 of them. And not once in the game did a Spanish player commit a cynical foul. Anyway.
All right, we'll come back to that in due course, but let's now go over to George Hamilton for the presentation of the World Cup to Spain.